Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to what might be the last episode, or very close to it, of Going Mental. We're going to explain more about that a little bit later. Don't worry, it's all good news. But right now, let me introduce from the home of the heatless hearth right now, the wonderful and quite erudite Dr. Tara Palmatier.
I ran out of kindling.
She ran out of kindling, folks. Now that's an unlikely excuse, but it's as good of me because as you can see by my bookshelves, I ran out of fireplace. Although I've got a lot of books up here, Tara, that would make very good kindling.
I don't burn books. I'm not a feminist.
Well, that's true, but these books have been read, and they could be burned. Some of them. I happen to keep stock up on everything from Betty Friedan to Gloria Steinem. I have read their works, and then I bathed, and now they are appropriate for kindling. So we can work out a deal. Let's talk a little bit first about the fact that there's going to be some changes to Going Mental. The primary change is going to be that in the future it is not going to be called Going Mental anymore. We may have one more, possibly two more Going Mental programs, but we are going to make a transition. Transition? How about a transition? Transition is the bastard child of transition and translation. But what we're going to go with is a transition, if you'll forgive me, of Going Mental to a new program that is very, very similar, perhaps a little more inclusive of a wider audience, and we're going to be calling it by the title of our book, link in the low bar.
Nudge, bye.
Nudge, nudge. That's there for pre-order, being released on May 10th, but you can pre-order your very personal coffee now, which I would suggest you do before prices go up, because as we understand it, China is lining up to purchase a copy of this book for every Chinese citizen. So just to let you know, the price of these could go up. Link in the low bar to pre-order yours. But we thought, since we were going to be branding the Say Goodbye to Crazy name, that we are going to be doing a lot of work in the future on how you assist men in saying goodbye to crazy, and how you assist women too in saying goodbye to crazy. That we might as well name the show along those lines. We will be moving to a new YouTube channel, which means all you out there, nearly 16,000 people that subscribe to this channel, we will have to pester you into subscribing to the new channel, especially those of you that have gotten benefit out of this program. It deserves its own platform, separate from AVFM, separate from the men's rights community, because this deals with a lot more broader topics. And I would dare say it even is somewhat separate from Shrink for Men, that it's going to be its own entity, and we are going to carry forward with it on that. And I'm personally very excited about doing it. I think it's a good move for us and good move for the people that we attempt to serve with this kind of programming. Does that sum it up correctly, Dr. T, or did I screw anything up?
You never screw anything up, Paul. You're perfect.
Well, no, I take that back. You know, I did make a mistake in 1973, and it was clear that I made, well, I hadn't really made one, but I thought I did. Found out later that what I had done was what is correct. But technically speaking, by thinking I had made a mistake, I had made one. So that's documented on record. That's me owning my shit, folks. That's me being accountable and responsible. I think Dr. T is already tired of me talking, and I can't say I blame her.
What I would add is that I love Going Mental. So as soon as whichever comes first, that either we have a 27-hour day, or Paul and I, our book is so successful that we can pull back on some of our other work activities that bring home the kibble. Then we may resurrect Going Mental. I would like to, certainly, to deal specifically with mental health issues for men and boys, because I think it's important. It's a topic, it's a subject that doesn't get nearly enough attention, and I think it's important that we do continue that. But for the time being, we've got a book to hawk, so hawk it we shall. And
yes, we shall.
I would like us to come back to Going Mental at some point as soon as we get some more time to do it.
I think the other good thing to add to that is what our plans are too, is with the new programming, is that not only will there be a change in name, slight change in focus. I mean, anybody who enjoys Going Mental is going to enjoy Say Goodbye to Crazy. You're going to get a lot of the same information. It's not like we're going to change on you and give a product out that you would not find interesting. You're going to like this stuff just as much. But the other ambition that we have, if you notice right now, where Dr. T is, the bandwidth availability is not quite sufficient to getting the pictures.
Order table.
Yes, it's gender discrimination there. I understand that any non-gingers in her area, their internet connection is just fine. But somebody has picked on Dr. T. But in that light, what we actually want to do and what we intend to do is for me to do things like get rid of these stupid headphones. We are going to pre-produce these programs. They are going to be shorter in duration so that we don't have to talk for an hour, and so that Dr. T doesn't have to spend her time while I'm talking to her dog, which is like really embarrassing, but something that I will get over. But we want to package a product that is much higher in production values, that is much more targeted on the information, cutting out all the extraneous talk, and getting down to the meat of what people want to know, and then presenting it in a package with very high production values that we believe will attract a lot more viewers and help spread the word a lot better. So expect that in the future. Expect it to develop slowly, but we have indeed begun buying all the equipment, getting the professional consultation in order to know how to produce, edit, and package and distribute these much better videos, which you will be seeing them right on here on YouTube, and you will be seeing them in the future for contributors on our Patreon page, which we will be developing soon. It's all good. So I guess that's enough shameless self-promotion. We're like 4.5 minutes into it, and we've done nothing but talk about ourselves, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
And I would like to add, if it isn't too embarrassing, you may even get a bonus reel of outtakes of me trying to learn new technology.
Folks, like I said, it's going to be the complete package, including comedy. You thought Jerry Lewis was funny. You don't know nothing. Jerry Lewis was a rank amateur. This is Dr. T is Jerry Lewis, Richard Pryor, and Lucille Ball all rolled up into one, especially if you remember Lucille Ball in the Chocolate Factory. That'll give you a good idea of Dr. T with technology. Had to throw that in there. You open the door, Dr. T. I'm going to do it.
I own it. I own it.
She owns her shit, folks. That's good. Okay, well, let's get to
my way through it.
Let's get to what we came here for. Let's talk about crazy. And you know, I got to say, in one way, I think we sort of feed into the pathology around here, or as they used to say in the treatment field, let's go with the denial, right? The fact of the matter is that crazy's #1 job skill is to get everybody to talk about crazy. That's what they do, and lo and behold, here we have an inexhaustive supply of information, enough that we could do a program a week for the next millennia, and we would not run out of things to say about crazy. And here we are doing it. So we're giving crazy what they want, only the problem with the way we do it is that we talk about crazy in a global perspective and a more overview of crazy. If we were talking about one crazy in particular, she would love this show. She would absolutely love it because it would be a show about her every week. And even if you're saying terrible things, it's still about her, so that's good. But we're not doing that. We're talking about crazy from a global perspective, and let's go ahead and start doing that now. We have titled this program Saying Goodbye to Crazy, and that is a very simple statement, but Dr. T, am I right or wrong? Saying goodbye to crazy is a very complicated, messy affair that is not near as simple quite so much as just saying goodbye.
That is correct, because oftentimes crazy is like a human boomerang. The, the more you toss her away, the harder she comes winging back at you. Kind of like the velociraptors in Jurassic Park, throwing herself against the electric fence, trying to find the weak link.
And not really caring much if she gets shocked in the process, because the objective is to find the weak link and get through. And if you have to take some pain to get that done, which is exactly what crazy will do, then they'll do it, because in the end, the winning or losing.
Well, and not just that, but when they experience natural consequences for violating your boundaries, they will claim that that is victimization. You know, if you or I were to stick our fingers in an electrical outlet and be shocked, we wouldn't say we were victimized. We would say, well, gosh, we probably shouldn't have stuck our fingers in the electric socket. But, you know, consequences are abuse, and
Yes.
boundaries they experience is you trying to control them.
In other words, folks, if crazy sticks her finger in an electric socket, then the electric company did something wrong.
That's right.
The people who built the socket did something wrong. It isn't that, hey, dumbass, you stuck your finger in an electric socket, and everybody with two brain cells to rub together knows that if you do that, you can end up in big trouble. She will say it happened because the electric company put electricity in there, and they didn't come knock on her door and point to every socket in her home and say, hey, there's this real powerful stuff called electricity flowing through there. Do not stick your fingers in there. And even if they did that, and she did it anyway, she would say whoever gave her the warning did not word it properly, or she wouldn't have ended up doing it. This is what we're talking about with crazy. So just having a crazy person messing with your life and saying, hey, you know, I've had enough of this, goodbye, you need to go away now, and I'm not going to have anything to do with you, that is not a goodbye to crazy. That is an invitation to...
That is a challenge.
Yes, it is an invitation to test another area of the electrified fence, because she does not take you seriously. She does not believe that goodbye means goodbye to her. It may mean goodbye to other people, but it doesn't mean goodbye to her. So the first thing I was thinking of, Tara, that I thought we might talk about is mindset. That for the individual saying goodbye, how critical that is, that this isn't just about your actions. When you want to remove a crazy person from your life, there are actions that you must take. But the attitude and the mindset you have taking those actions will determine whether or not they're ultimately successful. So if we could, Dr. T, can I get you to start us off to talk a little bit just about attitude, mindset, where a person should be internally, mentally, emotionally, in every way that you can think of, that will help them make that goodbye something more meaningful than just another challenge to crazy to overcome?
Certainly. Well, first things first, crazy will often target people who are especially compassionate, who are especially empathetic, and who are boundary challenged, meaning either they grew up in a family that had diffuse or very few boundaries, or were raised by abusive, crazy parents who taught you that you weren't allowed to have boundaries with other people, or that having boundaries meant that you weren't a good person or didn't love your mother or father. So crazy innately targets these kinds of people. So many times with the men and women I work with, they have to get over the faulty belief that having boundaries is mean, or that people will get angry with them and not like them or hate them if they have healthy boundaries. And yes, some people will, but those are crazy people. So that's a good way to figure out who you're dealing with. Is if you have boundaries and the person goes bananas, then that's probably not a person you want to have much contact with. So first, you really have to understand that boundaries are a healthy and functional thing to have in your life. You must have them, and you're not being mean, you're not being a jerk, and you're not being hateful, and you're not being controlling. You have a right to say, I don't want you in my life anymore. You have a right to say, leave me alone. You have a right to say, if you continue to treat me this way, we are not going to have a friendship, a marriage, any kind of relationship anymore. So that's the first mindset you need to adopt. Then I think the second mindset, and then Paul, if you want to go back and talk about 1 and 2 rather than trying to do everything at once after I go through it because I can't track all that stuff at once. I think the second thing you really need to wrap your brain around is that the normal rules of civility do not apply to crazy. Crazy counts on the fact that you don't want to be rude or impolite or harsh or that you're going to call crazy on being crazy. Okay, so you know, I often have this discussion with a lot of the guys I work with who are like, well, I want to end it, but you know, I'm going to have to go meet with her face to face because that's the right thing to do. And it's like, look, yeah, if you were dealing with a relatively healthy, reasonable human being, sure, you would give her that courtesy. But when you're dealing with somebody who's likely to have a rage out or start making threats to kill herself, you know, do it over email. Do it over the phone. Don't put yourself in harm's way. Oh, well, it wouldn't be fair if I didn't tell her that I'm talking to a divorce attorney. It's like, you're just as crazy is if you give her a heads up. So that's another thing that I think a lot of men and women have difficulty with when they're getting to this stage, is that they feel honor bound to treat crazy as if crazy wasn't crazy.
Okay, let me go back and make a couple of additional points about those first 2 things you brought up. And for me, honestly, not blowing smoke, I think Dr. T hit 2 grand slams in terms of the initial things that are important to understand, not about crazy, but about yourself going in to taking care of the problem of getting dysfunctional, high conflict, destructive people out of your life and out of your life for good. 1, what she said was that having boundaries is healthy and normal. It's not, doesn't make you mean. Let me phrase that another way. Let me Elamize this, if you will. Yeah, we're in trouble. Look, if you have the attitude that doing healthy things for you is somehow mean, get out of my face with your lying bullshit. Doing healthy things for yourself is in no way something a reasonable, sane person would come to a conclusion to. What saying, I need to be nice, I need to sacrifice boundaries in order to not be the meanie here. What you're saying is that you are weak and that you have no sense of boundaries and that you have trained yourself to believe that having boundaries is somehow cruel or abusive to people. Let me ask you something. If you're standing in your living room with your phone ready on speed dial and, for 911, or even if you have a weapon, and a junkie is coming through your window into your house, are you going to refrain from calling the police because it's impolite to do that? Are you going to refrain from defending yourself from a potential threat because you think it's mean to the burglar, to the junkie who's coming into your house? And again, that's why I'm rather cold-hearted about this. When I say get out of my face with that bullshit, I'm saying this is what we're talking about. High conflict personalities will have you put in jail on things you didn't do. High conflict personalities will destroy your reputation with your family and with your friends with lies. High conflict personalities will wipe out your bank account. High conflict personalities will alienate your own children against you with lies and destroy their lives in the process, all for a sick vendetta. To be sitting here talking about your concern for not being rude when dealing with individuals like that is crazier than crazy. So one of the first things in getting that attitude right is that you get and understand that you don't have an excuse not to say goodbye to crazy. You don't have an excuse to not set boundaries. What you have is cop-outs for why you walk through the fear of setting those boundaries and those limits. And so what if you feel bad? Nobody feels bad, especially if you once loved crazy or if you still love crazy. Nobody feels good about doing things that are going to cause them terrible angst and discomfort. But I've heard too many times from people, oh my gosh, I couldn't do that. That's so mean. Oh, please, what is wrong with you? It's like, look, I don't use terms like man up, but I use the term spine up all the time, and that applies to women as much as men. You have to get it in your head what you're dealing with and why you're dealing with it. The second thing that Dr. T brought up was, can you refresh me on that? It was, again, Dr. T, the second item.
Normal rules of civility do not apply.
Uh-oh, you cut out.
That the normal rules of civility.
Yes, the normal
rules of civility do not apply.
Yes, normal rules of civility do not apply, and this applies very much to the same analogy I just made about a burglar coming into your home or somebody trying to put their hands on your children and do bad things to them. Keep in mind, you know, people can come in your home and inappropriately touch your children. A horrible, horrible thing to do. Do you really imagine in your mind that poisoning your child's mind against you is somehow that much worse than that? Are you kidding me? This is psychological abuse on the highest order. And if you want to play nice and play footsie and try to talk to people and explain to them better ways to relate to your children when they are abusing your children, then you are enabling their abuse. I'm going to put it that way. You become a part of the problem. If you're negotiating with crazy about whether or not they should tell your child that you're a deadbeat that does not care about them and that you never cared about them and that your new girlfriend, you picked her because you didn't love your children enough to stay with your family, if you're going to tolerate that sort of thing, again, the problem goes back directly to you. And I don't care what the excuses are. I don't care what their rationalizations are. We don't need to beat you up with this. We don't need to beat the horse till it's dead. But we can't honestly talk about any one of these solutions unless we also acknowledge the fact that they are within your power to take action on and that there's nothing stopping you from doing that from you. Okay, Dr. T, was I too hard on people?
I think, you know what, if they're living with crazy, that was probably child's play.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. Yes, that was child's play. If you're living with crazy, if you're living with a child alienator, somebody that's dragging you into court every 6 months because they want more of your money, or who is sabotaging your visitation rights, or who is telling your family members, oh, he beat me the whole time we were married, and he cheated with other women, and he smacked the kids around, and none of that happened, I don't guess anything I just said ought to be too terribly hard for you to swallow. So what's next, Dr. T, when we talk about the mental, because we're going to get into what you actually do in a few minutes here, the things you can do and that you need to do, but in terms of developing the attitude that will allow you to do this effectively, what are maybe some of the other things we need to start looking at in order to make that happen?
Okay, the next two mindsets I think are important are, one, giving up on the wishful thinking, not hope, wishful thinking that crazy is somehow going to miraculously have a personality metamorphosis and all of a sudden become a reasonable, ethical human being. Not going to happen unless there's some kind of organic brain injury like Phineas Cage and a tamping iron goes through her skull and she suddenly becomes a nice, sane person. And really, really understanding that when you protect crazy from the natural consequences of her or his actions, such as going to jail for assaulting you, keeping their secrets, like if they're cheating on you, running around on you, engaging in other kinds of criminal activity. But by protecting crazy from the natural consequences, including exposure for her or his behaviors, what you are really doing is making it possible for crazy to continue to victimize you. Because when you protect crazy, you are not protecting yourself. And I see this time and time again with male clients who, when they have the opportunity, after crazy has assaulted them, to call the cops and file a report, they don't do it because they don't want to get the mother of their kids in trouble.
I saw a program, this was actually several years ago, but it's just as applicable today. It was one of these cops type programs, whatever it was, and it was something that was shot in a place I used to live, Washington State, which is a state that has mandatory arrest laws, or at least it did at the time of this program. And the police responded to a domestic violence case. They went out there and determined very clearly that the wife was out of her tree, that she was the one that was the physical aggressor. This guy had just tried to defend himself, and he stood there for 5 minutes and begged the police to take him to jail instead of her. Why? Because, you know, he said, I spent a night in jail once on a DUI. I know that I can survive it. I know that it's, you know, it's a rough place, but I hate the thought of her being jailed. And my thought even then, Dr. T, was, yes, please arrest this son of a bitch. Please arrest him. Take him and throw him in jail and charge him with stupid, felony stupid. Because
Darwin
what he was, what's that?
The Darwin Award.
Yes, the Darwin Award. Here's a guy living in an abusive relationship. There were kids in this, mind you. Keep in mind, there were kids in this scene, young ones, and he was so protective of her that he was willing to be the one to go to jail and to leave those children with a lunatic, abusive mother while he was locked up, simply to protect her from going to jail.
There probably are causes worth dying for, but protecting crazy from the consequences of her or his actions ain't it.
Yep, it is, and we see this all the time. You are not, keep in mind, if you go to a jail for an abusive woman, or if you enlist Dr. T and a team of other qualified psychiatrists, psychologists, whatever, and if you got the full weight of the men's movement behind you, you got everybody involved. At the end of the day, crazy's not going to be Mother Teresa, dude. She's not going to end up seeing the light of her ways. I don't care what you do. She's going to be just as batshit crazy, only she's going to be sitting there with the satisfaction of having you watch jump through 15 different hoops of fire in order to try to help her when she is an attacker in your life and she's trying to ruin your life. So I want to agree. Point 3 from Dr. T. Don't delude yourself into thinking that you're going to fix the crazy, that you're going to negotiate with her, that there's anything you can sacrifice for her. And this is the problem that men make, and I'm going to beat this dead horse some more. Men are the worst at this. They're the absolute worst. Well, if I just do the right thing, then she'll do the right thing. What comic books did you base your life on? Was it 1930s Superman episodes? Was it something that had the words truth, justice, and the American way in it? Are you out of your mind? You are not going to be nice to crazy to the point that she's nice back. You're going to give her ammunition to destroy you with, and that's all you're doing.
But, you know, also, I think the other part of this is sometimes men and women don't protect themselves from crazy by enforcing natural consequences because they're afraid that crazy will then retaliate even more.
And, may I say, tough shit. Yes.
Yes. But the point I make when I'm working with somebody who is like, well, but then she'll really get angry. It's like, dude, that's her baseline, and no matter what you do, she's going to be a miserable, rotten person. So protect yourself. Protect yourself. You have to protect yourself. Is she going to be angry? Sure, but if it's not that, it's going to be something else. So you may as well do what's good for you and document it. Document it in the legal system.
Let me add another analogy to that I've already used, and I'm going to bring it up here, and I know that the quote miners are going to love this, and that's fine, but I think people that have actually an IQ that's in more than single digits are going to understand this quite well. When I talked about somebody breaking into your home, and I'm not getting into a pro-gun argument or anything like that, I'm just using an analogy here, folks. If somebody is breaking into my home and I'm assuming that they're dangerous, which if somebody's breaking into your home while you're there, it's not a bad assumption that they're dangerous.
Pretty brazen.
What's that?
Pretty brazen.
Yeah, pretty brazen. So I'm going to tell you something. If somebody like that is breaking into my home, they're halfway in through the window that they've broken or whatever, I am not going to shoot them once. I'm going to empty the clip into them until I am 100% sure that they are not a threat to me or to the people that I love or to my property. It is not a negotiation at this point. Once somebody is actively in the middle of trying to harm me and presents a potential threat on that level, I'm pulling out all the stops. I am not dealing. Let's say that the guy breaking in used to be a friend of mine. I'm not going to use any less force because he used to be a friend of mine. I'm just not going to. If you're in real danger, and with crazy, you're in real danger. There's no doubt about that. It's absolutely asinine to assume anything else. Then the idea is you put them down until they cannot come back. And that, of course, all right, I'm going to need to say this because we always have that, 0.2% of the audience that can't draw the difference between analogy and reality. I'm not talking about shooting crazy folks. I'm not talking about bringing any kind of physical harm to the crazy in your life. What I'm talking about is making the idea of trying to harm you and your children so painful, so disruptive to their existence, so little reward that they will decide to go mess with somebody else and not with you. But don't delude yourself into thinking you're ever going to fix this stuff with them, or you're ever going to make them the kind of person that will just, oh, well, I'll do the right thing now. No, that is your sickness talking. That is your fear and your lack of fortitude talking that comes out and says, well, if I just do this and that nice. Anybody that's been around the block with crazy more than once is going to tell you that doesn't work.
Yep, there's an attorney who I occasionally consult with whose ex-wife has borderline personality disorder, and he has a similar analogy, which is when you finally, metaphorically, not literally, not crazy, down onto the ground, you don't offer her a hand to help her back up, because if you do, she's just going to sink that knife into your back again many, many times. When you finally get her down on the ground or on the ropes, whatever metaphor you want to use or analogy you want to use, you drive the proverbial stake through her heart so she can't get back up and come after you again.
We have addressed this in our, again, shameless plug too, link in the low bar. There's a book you can pre-order, Say Goodbye Crazy. But this is something that in the passing back and forth between Dr. T and I have chapters to this book, this has been one of the key areas of focus that we have had to discuss over and over and over again. It is difficult. One of the biggest plagues of modern self-help or psychiatry, psychology that people have to deal with is that generally most of that field lies to people enough to keep them engaged in coming back and spending more money. And Dr. T and I were both pledged absolutely not to be on that course with anybody. They're going to get the truth as we see it. Of course, the truth is different to each person's idea. I'm sure there's a lot of people with BPD who would tell you that none of our book is true. That is to be expected. But we talked a lot about this, and the fact of the matter is that neither one of us see that there's any room whatsoever in helping yourself deal with crazy by giving in to what amounts to cop-outs to not deal with crazy, because that's one thing they all have in common. If you look at, oh, well, I couldn't possibly have her put in jail. Oh, well, that couldn't possibly hurt her feelings that much. Oh, well, I couldn't possibly go back to the court and expose the lies that she's been telling. I couldn't possibly tell her no. All of it are, or what about the kids? If I tell the truth, if I deal with this directly, it'll hurt the kids that are already being alienated and hurt, by the way. And if I tell the truth, it'll hurt the kids even more. All of those are excuses, in my opinion, to give into your fear for the fact that you just don't want to confront crazy and deal with it in a way that will get rid of her. And not to say that people don't have legitimate fears about what crazy will do, because they are legitimate. And there's legitimate fears about her up in the ante with your kids, all kinds of other things. But if the objective, is to get crazy out of your life and to get rid of her, this is what you're going to have to do, whether it causes a little more temporary uptick in her antics or not. You're still going to have to make it painful.
And it will. It will. Once you start finally enforcing boundaries, she will escalate. In child psychology, it's called an extinction burst, which means when you're trying to phase out unwanted problematic behavior in a child, such as having tantrums, initially the child will escalate that behavior in the hopes that if they scream, cry, kick, pout, whatever the behavior is long enough, that you'll relent, give in, and give them the cookie or the toy. So a lot of people get discouraged. Well, I'm setting boundaries, but it's not getting better, it's getting worse. Typically, it will get worse before it gets better, because crazy is testing that boundary. So if it does get worse initially, that means it's working. So don't give up or give in. Keep that boundary in place.
And I think that what Dr. T just said is true. And what she said a few minutes ago is that crazy thrives off of the challenge. When crazy hears no, that isn't a disappointment to crazy at first blush. That is oh boy, I get to turn that no into a yes, and I'm the exact person that can do it. That's what you get the first few outings of setting boundaries with crazy. Where it starts paying off is that when she does have this outburst, this, what did you call it,
extinction burst.
A what?
Extinction burst.
Extinction burst. When her extinction burst comes, that's when you up your rigidity even more. That's when you make it a consequence for the extinction burst. And then when that turns into another extinction burst, then you make her pay more for doing that, not less. The only thing you reward with a borderline or a high conflicted personality is when they get the freak out of your life. And you reward that by smiling to yourself.
Right. Should we segue from mindset to tactics?
Sure. Let's take just 1 minute to recap first,
Sure.
and then let's move on. I want to say something, and let's let Dr. T recap it. The biggest, most important weapon you have in dealing with crazy is you. Don't make any mistake about it. There is no book, not even the one we're selling. There is no set of guidelines. There's no therapist. There's no counselor. I would send Dr. T to people for counseling in a heartbeat. But the fact of the matter is that there is nothing that will help you beat crazy more than you with the resolve to do it no matter what. And the way you do that is rule out of your mind that you're dealing with somebody that's going to learn. The only way that borderlines learn is through pain. That's it. They learn through suffering from consequences that are consistent for their own behavior. The other thing that you have is to understand that your boundaries are healthy, and in fact, I would go so far with the accountability is for you to understand that what you tolerate crazy visiting on your life and what you tolerate her visiting on the lives of your children, of your current relationships, of your family, all that stuff that you allow to happen is stuff that you are playing a full role in doing to your children, to your current relationship, and to your family. You must take responsibility for that if you want to further any action on that. And with that, I'll give it with Dr. T, and then we'll move on.
Okay. Do you want me to recap or go into a tactic?
Your choice.
Let's go into the tactic. People can rewind. And I can't remember everything I just said in the order I said it. No. So I think one of the most important tactics that you must master is mastery of your emotional reactions. When crazy pokes you, he or she wants to hear you say ouch. When crazy accuses you of something you haven't done, he or she wants you to go into a long, drawn-out defense of yourself. Okay? So don't give crazy that. All right? Even if on the inside you're angry, scared, sad, depressed, whatever you're feeling, do not let on to crazy that they have gotten to you, because that will only incentivize crazy to keep it going. All right? They get off on terrorizing you. Crazy gets off on inflicting pain. They cultivate cruelty. You know, I know, oh, it's because they're hurting that they hurt others. Whatever, I don't care. Okay? When you give crazy that emotional reaction, you're feeding the beast. Okay? So you got to make it, in some ways, you got to make it boring for crazy to mess with you. And you do that by denying him or her an emotional response to their abuse, to their shenanigans, to their baiting, whatever it is crazy is doing to you.
So let me ask you while you're in the middle of that, because that is, I mean, that's a huge key. And it's also one of those things that it's much easier said than done. For most people, it's very easy to say, well, you know, if she calls you a pig that never loved your children, it is an insult. It's painful to hear stuff like that from people that watched you love your children and watched you raise your children. That sort of thing is obviously Dr. T's right. Not reacting to it is the best way. But then again, Dr. T, how do we get people to train themselves to find benefit Because when we react to stuff, we're looking for justice. We're looking for somebody to say, by God, you know, yeah, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. You really did. You were a good father and you took care of your kids. You're never going to get that from crazy. But the drive to want that is still there very strongly in people. So what are some of the things that people can do to learn how to sit back and take a deep breath before reacting to something like that, and to simply not react to it and to stay focused on the business at hand?
Sure. Well, a lot of the guys and women I work with, particularly couples who are dealing with a crazy ex, I urge them to enforce a 48-hour rule or longer on responding to emails, unless it's a kid emergency, and I define kid emergency with an acronym, the 3 Bs: blood, broken bones, brain damage. And if one of those 3 conditions are not at work here, then, you know, there is no reason to immediately respond to an email that is, you're a goddamn SOB, blah, 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 blah. Did you send the child support check yet? You don't even need to respond to that one at all, especially if the child support check is in the mail or you send it at the same time every month. Okay?
That's why God made a delete button.
Oh, no, save the documentation. You never know when you're going to need
Yeah,
that.
yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Misquote. Ignore me, folks. Ignore me.
Don't delete it. Create a special folder. I have one in my inbox for the crazy emails I get titled Mixed Nuts. And that's where my crazy contact me. You know, if you don't have little children, you don't even need to open those emails right away. Okay?
Oh,
So.
and if you don't have children at all, you don't need to read anything.
Yeah, if you don't have kids and you're still like going over there to fix her plumbing, call me. We need to talk.
Quickly! Quickly!
Schedule an appointment. We need to talk. You know, the other thing that I think is important to do is you really need to redefine winning with crazy. Winning with crazy does not mean you're going to get her to see reason or reality, or that you actually are a good dad and that your wife isn't the whore of Babylon with a goat's tail and horns. Winning with crazy doesn't mean getting a legal victory, although that's nice. Winning with crazy doesn't mean she's going to stop alienating. Again, that would be nice too. When you win with crazy, when you no longer give her the power to upset you, when you remove her presence, and I don't mean physical presence, but when, I mean, because crazy can be in your house even if she's not physically there, okay? If she's the focus of your attention, if she's the focus of your conversation, a lot of the times with your new wife, you win when you shrink crazy to her proper size, which is a rapidly shrinking figure in your rear view mirror.
You win by refusing to give her rent in your head. You absolutely do. And again, this is something that's easier said than done, but what I'll point out to is that it is a matter of practice, and I can give you an example of this. One of the first things that anybody that gets into the field of counseling or psychotherapy or anything has to learn is detachment. And it is harder than you think. Psychotherapists, counselors, and stuff hear some of the most heartbreaking stories you can possibly imagine. They hear circumstances in people's lives that will literally make you get nauseous when you hear them, that will literally make you want to burst into tears for the injustice and the anguish that some people have been through. And I'm not just talking about men going through bad divorces. I'm talking about stuff I've heard over the years about children, what's happened to them in the course of a language. And I've heard it sometimes. I've had the client who's telling me about what's happened, something they've done to their children over the years. And my natural human instinct is to get up out of my chair and go to their chair and choke them to death. That is part of the deal. You're human. You
How
hear
much
stuff.
insurance premium did you have to pay?
What's that?
How much of an insurance premium did you have to pay?
I never violated it. I luckily never shared what was in my mind. So it was I was good the same ridiculously exorbitant amount that everybody else had to pay for malpractice insurance. Uh, but there are one of the arts that you have to learn, because also on the other side of that is you hear people who have very, very sympathy-inducing stories. You want to help. You wish you could play savior and make a magic wand wave and do stuff. And the answer to all that is detachment. You have to have a healthy sense of detachment from these people in order to help them. You cannot help them if you're too involved, if you're too invested. Matter of fact, it's kind of what we would call pathogenic to go in that direction, to take on the emotional burden for your clients' cases. And so what counselors have to do is individuate away from the client, take things from a very objective perspective to offer them unconditional positive regard wherever that's possible, but that not to invest 1 ounce of energy in the outcome. Whether the person leaves and whether they go really crazy and do something terrible, or whether or not they get better, it's not on you. It's not about you. It's about trying to help them in the best way you can. And so this in a forum, what I'm suggesting is helping crazy. Your detachment. If they say, okay, you're a shitty father, when you get to the point that you can say, okay, I'm hearing crazy talk now, so what I want to do with this is understand that I'm not dealing with somebody reasonable. It's time to remove myself from this conversation and go on about, I was on my way to get a cheeseburger, go get that cheeseburger and enjoy it. It's a very hard place to get to, but it is critical to get to the point that you separate crazy's opinion from your self-respect.
Mm-hmm.
And it is totally doable to do that, to let them just vomit out whatever they want. And again, I'm making a distinction here. If you're dealing with a crazy and you have no kids with her, what the F are you doing even talking to her at all? There is no reason to talk to her. You owe her nothing anymore. The relationship's over. And if you are perpetuating that, then you've got nobody to blame but yourself. You don't have so many clear-cut choices with children. You have to interact with crazy to some degree. But you can have and learn a lot of mastery over how you react to what comes out of crazy's mouth. And if you don't learn that, you can't go back to everything we've talked about before is based on possessing some level of that ability to detach. Mm-hmm. So if you don't start with the understanding that your job when you have to deal with crazy is to not react to her emotionally. Your job is to keep it all intellectualized and to think about whatever's going to come out of your mouth next. Because if she says you were a shit father and you say, that's not true, she just won. She just won. She got what she was looking for. If, on the other hand, she says you were a shit father and you say, the schedule says I'm supposed to pick up the kids at 6. Are we clear on that? Then you've won. Like she never even said it. And that I can't stress enough. And plus, if you want a little bit of the schadenfreude of having her go off the fucking, excuse me, I'm trying to clean up my terrible language, but to have her bounce off the walls like a pinball, if you want to get a little bit of vicarious enjoyment of watching that happen, then just go into, okay, I see where I'm supposed to pick up the kids at 6. Does that work for you? As a response to her insulting you, you will see her do that extinction fit on that.
Like she will spin like a top, and I tell you, the more detachment you get and the more her ability to get under your skin decreases. When she's pitching her fit, having a tantrum, spinning out of control like a top, pop some popcorn, man.
It's entertaining.
I gotta tell you, it is a process, but you can do it. I mean, there was a time when I was involved with a narcissist, and when we were in the process of breaking up, I was getting these really, truly insane emails, but at the time they were rattling me. And then after I did what I needed to do, and I went back and I read them, I just laughed. I'm like, he sounds like an out-of-control 4-year-old tyrant, like the Tyrant King. Up with your head! It's like, and they're actually pretty funny now. And at some point, you can get to that when you can read her emails or his emails and be like, still crazy after all these years.
All these years, yes.
Not Paul Simon.
As they say in Hollywood, folks, that's entertainment.
Yeah, when you can get to that point, then you truly have won. It's like, oh, it's the crazy show. What crazy hijinks is crazy going to get up to this week? Oh, she set the village on fire and then went around asking if everyone was okay. That crazy.
And you really get to the point of getting this when you get the 3,000-word email from Crazy, and you read the first 2 lines and you put it in your little keepers for mixed nuts file and don't read the rest of it.
That's nothing. I got a 12,000 plus word email from my ex.
Well, yeah, if you get a book.
A whirling dervish on meth.
If you get a book, folks, for an email after a relationship was over, just put it in the file, okay? Just put it in the file, because nothing in that is going to be worth reading. That's hysterical.
Unless you want to have a few laughs, but that's how you win. You got to shrink Crazy down to the appropriate size, which is complete and utter insignificance in your life. And one of the things that really helps a lot of the guys I work with, I'm like, okay, she's a 42-year-old woman going off the deep end here. Now imagine her as a 4-year-old child in mom's clothes and high heels doing this, because that's what you're really dealing with. You're dealing with a petulant child.
And we say all this for a reason, folks. I remember speaking with somebody not too long ago about a guy that was married for so many years, and 5 years after the divorce, 5 years, mind you, 5 years after a childless divorce, this guy gets a message from his ex-wife saying, I need you here on Friday. I need you to take off work, and I need you to come help me move because there's some of this furniture I can't lift. So he takes off work, and his explanation when asked, why are you doing this, was, well, she needs somebody to help her move. Guys, if that's you, you're crazier than your ex. The good news is that you can be fixed. The other good news is that if you realize it correctly, you'll figure out she can't. All I can say is we're not talking about, and T can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we're talking about a small percentage of men out there that have a horrible time letting go of what they feel like there is their responsibility toward a woman in a relationship after the relationship is over.
I would agree with that. I've had clients who, God, I had to go over there and install the screen door. I'm like, why? Why? Well, and this guy I'm thinking of had kids, and I'm like, well, she asked, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, she never going to do it. I'm like, it's called Google. You get a busy person. I'm like, do you want to be at her beck and call for the rest of your life? No, that's why I'm getting divorced. It's like, well, then, okay.
Don't do the screen door.
Quit installing her screen door. It's like, you know what? If this were an amicable divorce and she wasn't trying to make your life a living hell, I could understand, they've got kids together, they're still minors, can you fix the door? Okay, maybe not all the time, but sure. But this is a woman who was actively trying to destroy him, and he was installing her screen door.
Folks, I got a good suggestion for you. It's called LM as in Mary, GTFY.com, which is an acronym for Let Me Google That For You.com. And what you can do is you can go in and do the search for her. Screen door repair, handyman in Milwaukee, or wherever crazy happens to live. Send her the link, and it will send her this little motion picture of the words screen door repair in Milwaukee being Googled, and the click, and then the list of people that she can contact. I would that's LMGTFY.com. Go to that anytime you get a request from crazy for you to do something that the bitch is supposed to be doing on her own at this point. Send her a Let Me Google That For You. That will get your message across. And you know what? All you have to do, hear this real closely, all you do is send the link. Do not send a hello or a goodbye or sign your name. Just send her back the link. If that'll even get the message.
I do want to add a caveat that if you are still in legal custody,
yes,
works, or don't send a smart. That's kind of a smart ass thing, and while I appreciate that, and it's certainly something I would do, if you are currently battling it out over custody issues, you
probably look bad on you. But again, yes,
that could be seen as incendiary, and you, as especially if you're the man in the situation, you have to be Gandhi, the Dalai Lama, and Jesus Christ all wrapped into one. Okay, she can get away with bloody murder. You can't. Save the sarcasm, and don't even give her sarcasm, really, because that'll get going too. The best
sarcasm says she's gotten to you.
Response is no response, although it is tempting every now and again to sort of poke the hornet's nest. I get it. But really, ultimately, as I said, best response is no response.
Yes, and Dr. T is absolutely right, and that being acknowledged, I will tell you that would still be my response because I'm an asshole, and I can't help but do stuff like that, but I do certainly agree her advice is very, very, very important on that. If you're in the middle of a child custody dispute, the last thing you want to do is give them snarky, and they will read it as snarky because it is, to give them any snarky ammunition against you. But if we're talking about a divorce that has been finalized or a relationship that has ended, I will disagree with Dr. T, which I seldom do. I would send the Let Me Google That For You under those circumstances because potato. And that works for me. The other and really honestly better option is no response. You don't even know her going to Let Me Google That For You and doing all that. But certainly direct snarkiness from you, like, what are you doing asking me for this? That's a win for her.
Mm-hmm.
That is a win for her. She will know she's got you engaged, and then she'll want to explain why she's asking you, because you're the man in her life that, despite the fact that you broke up, that can help with these things, and she's just a poor victim. And now you're abandoning me yet again, and she will try every way she can to play into your guilt card in order to re-engage you and start abusing you again.
Remember, crazy, no good deed goes unpunished.
That's right. That's right. But yes. Okay, so what's next in our execution? I'm going to bring up one.
We are at an hour, so I say if you want to know more, buy the book.
We can't possibly be at an hour.
I think we are. Didn't we start at 9 Central?
Yes, we did. Oh, my God. Yeah, this is something I tell you folks, if you sit down and have an interesting conversation with the ginger, time flies. It does. There's something about ginger talk that just really makes the clock disappear from your consciousness. But yeah, we're not only doing it, we're 10 minutes over.
Time flies when you're crazy busting.
Well, here's a great deal. Hey, if you want to know more about the preparation And the execution of saying goodbye to crazy, you can go where? Where, Tora? In the low bar. Yes, you can go in the low bar right now, and you can order your book of Say Goodbye to Crazy, where we take all this stuff into extremely fine detail and a lot more. This is maybe a tiny, tiny fraction of what you'll find in that book, what we've talked about tonight, and you're going to see a lot more in it. It is, trust me, the price of the book is about a tenth of what you would spend on a lawyer in an hour. The price of the book would get you like 4.5 minutes with a lawyer, including the hold time to get them on the line. It will cost you a lot less in trips to go fix screen doors and move furniture. And it will certainly cost you a lot less in terms of the rent you have to give up in your head to Miss Crazy Pants after she's supposed to be long gone and making somebody else miserable, which is just fine with me, because you shouldn't feel guilty about that either. You don't owe the world to save it from Miss Crazy Pants. You just owe it to yourself. And if you're involved with somebody else right now, and if you have children with somebody else, you owe it to those people. Shaming message alert. I'm going to say it, and I'm going to say it unabashedly. If you're in a relationship, a marriage, if you're connected to somebody that you care about and you have children with them, it is your job to protect that relationship from crazy. And if you're not doing it, then you're betraying the people that you're with. There, I've had my big judgment call for the day. But I bet Dr. T won't disagree with me too strongly.
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. And you're failing yourself, because you know what? You matter, and you have a right to the peaceful enjoyment of your life.
And I know Crazy has told you just the opposite of that for as long as you were with her. She has reminded you 100 times a day that you do not matter and you don't have a right to anything except the wonderful privilege of doing whatever it is that she wants you to do for her. But the further you get from Crazy, the more detached you get from Crazy, the more you figure out what a batshit insane message that is. And you won't put up with it. And gosh, we are running over. Have enjoyed this. Let's talk about it some more sometime in the next week, possibly 2 weeks, 3 weeks, somewhere along there. We're going to come back on a new channel. We will be begging you, pleading with you to come to subscribe to the new channel in order to follow this show. But this is a separate entity. This is a project that Dr. T and I both believe in so much that we are going to separate it from everything and focus on Say Goodbye to Crazy, because for me, I believe there's lives to be saved here.
Your redheaded stepchild.
That's right. Okay, folks, well, that's good. Dr. T, any closing words?
Oh, say goodbye to crazy, please. Just do it. Do it.
Folks, say goodbye to crazy, and if they don't listen, just slam the door in their face. They'll get the message.
The one that you didn't install.
The what?
The door. Slam the door that you didn't install.
Yes, exactly. Slam the door that you didn't install, and make sure it's locked, and make sure you're safe. We're going to wish you all a good evening, and we will see you next week, where we might be talking about crazy again. With that, bye-bye.